And welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Blue Review, a very special edition as we are joined by Doug McCain. You may know him as DMAC LA on Twitter, but of course, he is our friend, the Dodgers reporter for Dodgers Nation, and the host of, and this might be one of my favorite podcast names, Dodgers Dugout Podcast. Doug, welcome to the Blue Review, and thank you for joining us. How are we feeling this Thursday?
Now, I'm feeling great about the Dodgers, but I'm feeling great about being on this show. Thanks for the compliment on the podcast name, because you know what? When I first saw the Blue Review, it's one of those names where I thought to myself, man, I wish I had thought of that name, right? It kind of rhymes. It's fun to say. Also, the Dodgers can't say you use their name in the podcast and say you own it, right? So maybe the Dodgers feel like they own the color blue, like Guggenheim in there somewhere. But I'm so happy to be here, guys. I tuned into the show, love the show, and ready to talk some Dodger baseball.
Yeah, really appreciate you being here, Doug. And my first question, and then Parker can get into the LAX stuff. But when you say dugout, do you actually like put the emphasis on the Doug? And you're like the dugout, or is it?
I did throw in the OU in there, like Dodgers dugout. It's in the logo just to kind of switch it up. Because like I said, I didn't want Guggenheim. I didn't want the Dodgers to come after me. So wanted to switch it up just a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, it's great times. I mean, we're talking Dodger baseball Monday through Friday, pretty much every single day, even on the weekends. I mean, these fans, they can't get enough. I mean, the fans that tune into my show, if I bring up football and basketball and other sports, some of them don't even watch other sports. It's like all Dodgers 24/7, yep. And especially with this team and Ohtani and everything surrounding this team. Good, bad, or ugly. I mean, this is the golden age of Dodger baseball, just as far as fan interest goes.
All right, so here we are, 21 games into the season, 12-9, right? Midway through April. They have lost 3 of the last 4 series, but they're still in first place. What is your, on a scale of, we're just chilling, eating a Dodger dog to like all out manic panic trying to get to, like, where is your panic level right now?
I mean, at this point, you just have to blow it up and hope for a quick rebuild, right? I mean, where this team is at starting the season, I mean, they weren't going to go 162-0. But look, seriously, this is par for the course for Dodger baseball. I mean, last season, you start 15-12, you win 100 games. Before that, 2022, you go 13-7, right around the same record. They won 111 games. I mean, Greg, back in 2017, you remember the losing streak? You lose 10, 11, 2019, in 2022, 2021, you have all these losing streaks. You have the losing streak where you lost 15 of 20. It's still early in the season. I know it's a cliche, and I know at some point it's going to turn into, it's only April. Oh, it's only May. Oh, it's only June. Oh, it's only October, right? I understand all of that, but when you look at this team, they're not fully formed yet. I mean, Walker Buehler said to make another start in Oklahoma City.
Today.
I think getting him back, kind of just solidifying this rotation, because I think what you're seeing right now is, yes, the offense. I mean, yesterday you get shut out for the first time since July of 2023, and there's no excuse to get shut out with a lineup like this going up against the Washington Nationals. But I really think it starts and ends with the rotation and just getting guys fully healthy in the bullpen as well. So it's still early. If this team was fully healthy and they're struggling, then maybe I would push the panic button just a little bit. But this is really what this team is doing early in the year. They're assessing some of the young guys. They're waiting to get guys healthy. And look, whatever happens, they're going to fully address their needs at the trade deadline if they need to add another bat at the bottom of the line, if they need to add another lefty for the pen. So not overly concerned, but I mean, you would have liked to stack some wins when you look at the way this 9-game homestand lined up to just really separate yourself already in the division.
Yeah, so I mean, you hit a bunch of different things that we're going to get into with the pitching staff, the bottom of the lineup, all those things. We're getting into all of those things, but it's very, very early. And would you be surprised? Because I know I wouldn't be. At some point in the season, at any point, they're going to go 60-12 or something crazy like that. It's just going to happen. It's way too early, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But let's start off with the pitching staff. You did mention that Walker Buehler is going to be coming back hopefully soon. I think he's pitching today. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, Parker. But I think has a rehab assignment today. And then after that, he could be back up in here. So they need a 6-man rotation with the way this whole thing works out. Does he just slide into the 6-man rotation, or do they start pulling somebody out?
I think when you look at where this rotation stands, I mean, you hope that Bobby Miller, he comes back. And I talked to him a couple days ago, and he says that really this is a lot of nothing. It was more precautionary, and that he's confident that he's going to be able to have a healthy season, that there's really no red flags there. But, I mean, you look at Yamamoto, right? I mean, they're trying to maintain that Japanese NPB schedule where he's getting more than 4 days of rest, right? It's like pitching once a week. But with Walker Buehler, he's in a contract year. He's going to try to come back and establish himself after a second Tommy John surgery. I don't think you can expect him to be ace level 2019, 2020, 16 strikeout per game Walker Buehler, but I think that he's going to be solid. He's going to be a number 3 starter kind of as his floor, really. But as far as going to a 6-man rotation, I think it just kind of all depends. I mean, Gavin Stone, he's looked really solid. He's made strides. He's refined that pitch mix. He's been able to go out there and be effective. But when you do that, of course, you have to guarantee they're going to give you 6 or 7 innings every start, right? You can't go out there with the 6-man rotation and give yourself short outings, but I definitely think it makes the most sense. And right now, let's be honest, they have an unofficial 6-man rotation where Ryan Yarbrough is the bulk guy. Ryan Yarbrough went 5 innings his last start, and I think they're going to continue to trend in that direction where they're going to maintain that flexibility, and they're going to have some scheduled bullpen days along the way. But I think if Walker Buehler is fully healthy, I think I'd rather feel more comfortable with having Walker Buehler in that rotation, and then you give that 6-man rotation spot to some of the guys that we saw yesterday. I mean, Landon Knack proved he can get out big league hitters, and you kind of use those options wisely so you don't overly tax that bullpen.
Do you see this 6-man thing lasting all year long? I mean, I know it works right now, especially as you're ramping guys up and getting guys back, but you're going to get to a point, in theory, September, October, where you don't have the luxury of running a guy out there necessarily 1 day a week. At some point, it feels like they've got to get – I know they want to make Yamamoto comfortable. At some point, though, it feels like they've got to get him more comfortable with having, I guess what for him would be short rest when you get to those critical games at the end of the season.
I mean, I think they're going to take advantage of their depth, right? I mean, right now, thankfully, you've been able to stay healthy throughout the first couple of weeks of the season. But let's not forget, I mean, you have a lot of upside in high-level performance pitchers like Tyler Glasnow and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But both those guys, the big question with them is, one, with Yamamoto, how does he handle transitioning to Major League Baseball, pitching on a Major League level schedule? And then Tyler Glasnow, most starts he's ever made in his season is 21. The most innings he's ever pitched is 120. Glasnow told me it's his personal goal to shatter those, and he hears kind of the doubters out there saying he's a glass man and that kind of stuff. So he wants to put that to rest. But look, you still have Kershaw coming back, hopefully, at some point towards the end of the summer. You got Walker Buehler coming back soon. You have Dustin May possibly later as a long man out of the bullpen. So they're going to take advantage of their depth as long as they can because they're trying to save as many bullets as you can to get these guys to peak when it matters most in October. This team is not built for April. They're built for October. So can you sustain that? I absolutely think you can. It's just a matter of will guys stay healthy and will you get length in 5, 6, 7 innings every time those guys take the ball.
Yeah, see, I think you made a really good point that they're not built for April. And I think that's kind of where I've been seeing. I see a lot of people saying, oh, we need these pitchers to go 6, 7 innings. I don't really care if in April, May, and June, if they're going 5 innings. I prefer them to just be healthy and go all the way down to when you get to September and October, they're built up so they can go 6, 7 innings. If I'm only going to get a certain amount of pitches out of all these guys, I want them all when it matters at the end of the season. I mean, that's just kind of how I look at it. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, and Greg, to your point, I mean, take a guy for James Paxton, for example, right? I mean, This is someone who, he's not a number 1 or a 2, but you'll take a 5-inning performance of 2-run ball from your number 5 starter that's not going to be a starter in the postseason. A lot of people are going crazy and pressing the panic button about games that aren't going to look anything like postseason games, right? James Paxton is not going to be your postseason starter unless things went really wrong, right? I mean, at the very best, he slides into the bullpen, but that's what the Dodgers do. I mean, even when they signed Noah Syndergaard last season, I don't think they did that thinking that, okay, he's going to be our guy in the postseason. They just know that you have to count innings and cover innings in the regular season, and anytime they sign one of these veterans on a shorter-term deal, they ride them like a rented car, right? I mean, they're pushing the pedal to the floor and trying to get as much out of them as they possibly can. But I do think, I mean, there's just been a lot of bad luck lately. I mean, Tyler Glasnow, think about this, Greg. I mean, you have 14 strikeout game on 88 pitches. You look like the best player on the planet, the best pitchers that we've seen since
Gets
Buehler and
blasted in the
Kurz.
next one.
And then you follow that up, and you're sick as a dog. You're coughing on the mound. He didn't want to admit it after the game, but Dave Roberts told us that he was a little under the weather, didn't have that curveball, didn't have that fastball command. And you talk to people that cover the Rays, and they'll tell you that, man, like once or twice a year, for whatever reason, Glasnow just does not have it. So you kind of have this bad luck just kind of stacked up. And I do, we're going to talk about the bullpen a little bit. I think there's more questions about the bullpen than really the quality of the starting rotation right now, but it's still early in the season, and you're just kind of trying to ramp guys up to get that length.
Well, let's talk about that bullpen too, because I watching them so far this season, it feels like you talk about this team being built for September and October and not for April. It feels like they are using April and probably May and maybe even into June to sort of feel out what roles potentially could be there. And I know Greg likes to talk about the fact that the bullpen as it looks now isn't going to be what it looks like when we get to the postseason, but it does feel like Roberts is sort of using these opportunities to kind of figure out where guys potentially can slot when the games actually mean something more.
100%. And on top of that, you don't have one of your key cogs in Brusdar Graterol, who outside of Evan Phillips last season was their very best high leverage reliever. Really quietly had the best year of his career. He won't be eligible to return until May 18th. I saw him throwing on the field yesterday. He's in good spirits. He's trending in the right direction. Blake Trinan is someone who missed all of last season. He's been dealing with injuries, but they were confident that he was going to be able to return and be a key contributor to this team. He hasn't made his way back yet. Daniel Hudson has quietly done a really nice job for this team. But look, outside of Evan Phillips, look, all these guys have been touch and go on a per appearance basis. Ryan Brazier is someone they brought back who really was the reason why this bullpen turned things around. Last season, this bullpen at one point, they were an absolute tire fire, right? They were literally the worst bullpen in franchise history. And then they ended the season really right at the top at pretty much every single category. Ryan Brazier was the biggest reason for that. I mean, he had an ERA over 7 with the Red Sox. They picked him up, and he was lights out for the Dodgers. He just has not looked sharp lately. I mean, he hasn't had the feel for that cutter. He hasn't been hitting on location. And I think you need top to bottom just a little more consistency, right? I mean, the way that they're using these options is insane. I mean, the way that they're playing with this roster, I don't want to say it's a little too cute, right? I mean, but they've used literally nine pitchers on a single roster spot in 19 days in 17 games. You looked at that to cover all those innings. So they've used 17 and 2/3 innings they've covered with that one roster spot. And it's been to a 4.58 ERA. I mean, you have Vanasco and Fireisen, Brogdon, Varland, Lamet, Krismat. I mean, it's just insane what they're doing with this roster. But I mean, look, it's what the Dodgers do. They like to stretch it. But I think you need a little more cohesion in that bullpen, and you really need guys to just kind of solidify those roles.
Yeah, so I think you make a really good point as well there, because you're talking about like the Krismats and the the Lamets and how they're going up and down. But besides the fact that they didn't get touched up, most of those guys are if you look at the bullpen and how bad it is, those are the guys that are getting touched up. Evan Phillips is not getting touched up. Joe Kelly, he had one really bad outing and has been fantastic ever since. I think he has like 5 or 6 clean innings ever since then, with only 1 walk. So, or maybe 2 now. But the fact of the matter is, the guys that you really need to be pitching well in that bullpen are Daniel Hudson is pitching well. He gives up a home run every once in a while, but he's pitching really well. Most of those guys in the back end of the bullpen are good. It's the guys in the middle, like the Vezias and the Fireisens. And
it took 14 minutes, by the way, for you to get to Vezia.
Yeah.
I was trying not to do it, Marcus. I was really trying not to get to him, but we're talking about bullpen, so I had to do it. I'm not worried about the bullpen because, as Marcus said, I'm very much in that camp of it's just not what it's going to look like at the end of the season. And you were talking about it too. It starts off like this all the time. The beginning of the season, most of the year, it's bad. And then when it matters, oh, look at that. The bullpen's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you got this team that you're saying, okay, they have a lot of depth. That's what separates the Dodgers from other teams, right? It's not 1 and 2, it's 25 and 26, the bottom of that roster. And the way they're just trying to manipulate it, it's really a reason because they're trying to deal with those injuries. But I mean, I had a friend text me yesterday after they brought up Salazar. They're like, man, they're just making up names at this point, right? Right. Making up names. Who the hell is Eduardo Salazar? I mean, he's the only guy that didn't even make an appearance. And look, Vanasco, give him a lot of credit. The other day, he goes 2 scoreless innings, high spin on the fastball. I definitely think there's potential there. Ramirez, too, I thought his stuff was good.
I like Ramirez.
Yeah, I really like Ramirez, too. I mean, I think they didn't tax the bullpen, the high leverage arms there. But, yeah, really, I think what they're going to do, and we're talking about Vesey in a second, is I think that really they're using this first part of the season. And I think it's a necessary evil. It's not fun. I mean, I don't care if it's a spring training game, if it's regular season posting game. Losing just doesn't feel good. When you're driving to work, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't feel good to lose baseball games. But I think for the way this roster is constructed and it's so top heavy with some of these big contracts is you have to see what you can get from these young guys. Like, are there going to be any of these young guys that you're going to trust in the bullpen in October? Are any some of these reclamation project guys, some of these NRI guys, are they going to have a breakout year like a Evan Phillips did a couple of seasons ago when they picked him up from Tampa Bay, like a Ryan Brazier last year? I mean, Chris Martin, they got in a trade a couple years ago. He worked out. Are you going to be able to get those guys that you can take to the next level? Or for the first time in a while, are we going to see the Dodgers go out there and get a brand name reliever at the deadline? I think that's really what I'm kind of circling right now because, look at Josh Hader. Look at Tanner Scott. Some of these high-leverage relievers around the league, they've gone off to bad starts. So when you consider the volatility of bullpen pieces, I don't think you want to make your big bullpen signing in the offseason. I don't think you want to make your big bullpen trade in the offseason. We saw what happened a couple years ago when they did that with Craig Kimbrell. How did that work out, right? I mean, Kimbrell's they had to let him go towards the end of the season, right? I mean, trying to build a bullpen, not a snowman. So, I mean, I think that's what Andrew Friedman is doing right now. And I don't know if you remember this, Greg, and a couple years ago, Friedman talked about how what keeps him up at night is the bullpen because they're just so tricky. They're so difficult to figure out. He knows what Shohei Ohtani is going to do. He knows what Mookie Betts and Tyler Glasnow and these proven commodities are going to do because there's less volatility from year to year. But the bullpen can be very frustrating, especially early in the season, because you just don't know who has it on a given year.
Yeah.
So, Doug, you mentioned and you brought up the words top heavy. So why don't we kind of shift into the other end of the field, the batters. So obviously 1 through 9, there's a big disparity. And of course, Freddie's kind of dealing with some things, but we don't even need to talk about Freddie because Freddie will be fine, and we know that to be true. But the bottom end of the lineup, Doug, just how are we feeling so far? And is Andy Pages the answer? Are we waiting on a guy like Jason Hayward to come back? Just what are your thoughts on that so far?
I mean, the way that this lineup was constructed was, look, we're not looking for the bottom of the lineup to go out there and hit tons of home runs and get tons of doubles. They were just hoping that they would get on base, right, and provide more opportunities for Mookie and Ohtani and Freddie to generate runs. But unfortunately, the on-base has been incredibly low. They're 29th in Major League Baseball in on-base percentage, 28th in OPS. I mean, you look at the strikeout rate, it's been incredibly high, and they just haven't been able to put the ball in play. And you mentioned it, the disparity with the top of the lineup to the bottom of the lineup, it's extreme. I mean, 1 through 4, they're the best in baseball. 7 through 9, they're the worst in baseball in every statistical category. And look, I mean, we know the top. You got the Kobe's and Shaqs at the top, right? You got Mookie and Ohtani. The bottom, though, we were just hoping not to get the Adam Morrises and the Robert Stockrays and the Smush Parkers, right? Just a little better than that. Just a little better than that, and this team would be in a much better spot. And you mentioned Freddie Freeman. Not worried about Freddie Freeman. He's 8 for his last 42 in his last 11 games, hitting under 200 in that stretch. It's definitely a little bit of an issue we'll talk about in a second. But, yeah, I mean, look, I think really when it comes to the bottom of this lineup, it really comes down to this. The Dodgers bet on some of these guys, and they just have not come through. It's just not happening for them at the moment. Gavin Lux, he missed an entire year. He just hasn't had his timing. I think his confidence got a little shaken up after he was moved off his shortstop early on just because you couldn't hit any throws. I mean, he just really struggled with that position. But with Gavin Lux, it kind of makes you wonder, did you bet on the wrong guy, right? With Michael Busch having the season that he's having. I mean, he's going nuclear at the plate. But I think for Lux, you wanted to see him impact the game with his speed. But unfortunately, I mean, he's in the 42nd percentile in sprint speed. I mean, if you look at his barrel rates in the 1 percentile, he's not hitting the ball hard. He's just not having the results. I personally believe that he needs a 150 to 200 plate appearance run to truly accurately assess him. I think if you send him down, I think that would really destroy his confidence. He's a player that kind of relies on just kind of feeling good. If things go south and go really bad for him, the good optimistic part of this lineup is James Outman. James Outman's been hitting the ball harder lately, had a couple home runs in the Twins series, not chasing as much. But that's another part of the lineup where I say, you know what? This is a man's league when it comes to the postseason. I don't know if they're going to bet on these Andy Pages types when it comes down to crunch time. I think they'll go out there and explore possibly a trade for an outfielder, possibly a trade for an infielder, because you consider with Teoscar and Mookie, the versatility that they have, you have some options if you want to go out there and pick someone up.
What do you do with Chris Taylor? I mean, right now.
Yeah, so the Chris Taylor thing, I had someone on my show, they were saying, it's bad when your batting average is a blood alcohol level, right? And
it's a great point.
0.029. I mean, look, I have, I you know how it is, Greg. You know the show. I mean, people take the losses bad. They call him Chris Kaler, swing and miss Chris. I mean, list goes on and on, but you just feel bad. I mean, the guy's 1 for 35. The guy's 1 for 35 to start the season. And for me, what do you do with him? I think the options for Chris Taylor are pretty simple. Can you phantom IL him and allow him to just completely hit that reset button, try to work out the mechanics of his swing, and see if you can just keep him warm, and then hopefully he comes back for the postseason and maybe have a role for him, and then maybe he catches fire. Let's not forget, a couple seasons ago when he hit the walk-off shot against Alex Reyes in the wild card game, and we were talking about Ock Taylor and all that stuff, he was 8 for 72 heading into that at-bat. And then he went on an absolute heater. So he's such a streaky player. I talked to Dave Roberts a couple days ago about this, and what Dave told me is, look, we've always known he's a streaky player. It's just this streak is kind of worse than anything we've kind of seen in the past, right? I mean, this is something where his confidence, his frustration level, it's definitely very high on the frustration level, low on the confidence level, and it's not for lack of preparation. I mean, usually you see Chris Taylor, to doing his routine with the at-bats. A couple days ago, I saw him with double iPads on both sides, filming stuff. I mean, clearly they think there's something up with his swing, and look, he's always had a boomer bust type swing, right? Kind of swinging under fastballs with looping swings when it's not working. The load is kind of extreme, but I almost think that if you look at 2017 Chris Taylor and 2024 Chris Taylor, you see the same swing, and you have to adjust a little bit, right? I think he's lost a little quick twitch. I think Father Time has caught up to a little bit. I think he needs to flatten out that bat path to see if he can go out there and kind of reinvent himself a little bit, because this swing is just not going to cut it at this stage of his career.
No, you're right. It's absolutely not. And I think the other option that you were gonna say was going to be DFA. I think that's what a lot of fans want. But so it's either, I don't think that's the point. I think the Phantom IL is the right place for him to go. But we only have about a minute left before we got to get to Travis and Sliwa. So we have to give me real fast, 30 seconds each. Your biggest thing that the biggest positive, biggest negative about the season so far, and we'll go from there.
Hey, the biggest positive, I don't care what anyone says, Shohei Ohtani is a Los Angeles Dodger, right? Shohei Ohtani slugs at a level, it's so effortless. I mean, he really hasn't even hit his peak at all, and he goes out there and he makes it look easy. It's been said for certain players in the past, but you can close your eyes, and when Shohei Ohtani hits the baseball, it sounds different. It is just a deep thump. It sounds like a shotgun went off. So Shohei Ohtani is a Los Angeles Dodger, and anytime you have the best player in the game, I don't care what sport it is. Of course, it didn't work for the Angels, but you have the depth around him in Mookie Betts. I still think that this team is in a great spot. And also, I think number two is that, look, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, after that first start, people calling him a bust, people saying that $325 million down the drain. This guy has elite top shelf stuff. This guy, to me, is the most fun I've ever had watching a pitcher in years, with that yo-yo curveball, with a splitter that's already grading out as the best splitty in the game. So they've hit on Yamamoto, in my opinion. Glass now is the surefire ace. And then also number one, Mookie Betts is still in his prime. And that's one thing I've worried about. When do Mookie and Freddie fall out of their primes? Well, you have Mookie still in his prime. I think that this is a year for Mookie Betts where it's a legacy season for him. I think he's going out there and proving he's still one of the best players in the sport. And I still feel really good about this team, because you can't trade for an Ohtani during the season. You're rarely going to trade for a Mookie Betts during the season. You're not going to sign a Yamamoto during the season. You're not going to trade for a Glasnow during the season, most likely. But what you can do, you can trade for bottom of the order type pieces, and you can trade for bullpen pieces. So as long as the team stays healthy, they're going to be just fine. And I still feel really good about their World Series chances.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and like ending it on a positive note. That's always
That's right.
really a
Mitch,
good
a lot of
thing to
half
do.
full, baby.
No, right, that's what I'm talking about right there. All right, Parker, why don't you take us away with that LAX read? Thank you very much to LAX, and then we'll have you on again soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much
That's
for having
right.
me, man. I had a blast.
Thank you, Doug. And guys, before we head out, I'd be remiss not to mention that today, on this day in 1950, Vin Scully made his first ever call. So everyone send some love to the late, great Vin Scully.
Love you, Vin.
Shout out. Thank you to LAX at Los Angeles International Airport. They're changing the travel experience, reducing traffic, saving guests time. And if you want to know more, check it out at flylx.com/transforminglax. Again, thank you, Doug, for joining us. We hope we can do this more. Marcus, Grant, it was an honor to have you here as well. As always,
Every day.
Greg, I've been Parker Bell. Go